Huge thanks to our sponsors for making ResolveCon 24 possible. Motion VFX makes the best plugins for DaVinci Resolve. They have plugins to quickly add beautiful graphics to any kind of project you're working on, and they're compatible with both Mac and Windows. And right now you can get their mHello 3D for free. This is a pack of super useful 3D shapes that you can add to any video and take your visuals up a notch. Just click right here or the link in the description. And of course, ResolveCon would not be possible without Blackmagic Design. They just came out with the full release of DaVinci Resolve 19. For editing, color, effects, and audio, it's pretty much everything you need to make any kind of project in DaVinci Resolve. You can download DaVinci Resolve 19 right here or in the link in the description.
Hello everyone, people know I like short intros, so here everybody, it's CameraTim. I'm going to show you some multicam voice colors and DaVinci Resolve and stuff. There you go, I did it. All right, awesome. So before we start, we do have some prerequisites here, and I'll just kidding, I'm doing an actual intro. So yes, I'm Tim Seneker, I am CameraTim. I do some YouTube content on DaVinci Resolve, kind of like a variety of a lot of different things. I've been working in the film industry for a little over a decade now. As a cinematographer, editor, and sometimes as a colorist. And yeah, I'm excited to show you some multicam workflows because I actually run into this workflow a lot, and I've been doing a lot of different things with like interviews, music videos, podcasts, and narrative pieces. Like there's so many ways you could use multicam. You could even use multicam even if you just have a single camera, which is kind of nuts. We're going to get into that later today as well. So we are going to get into a couple of prerequisites here. So we're going to go up to our keyboard customization here. And there's some shortcuts that I want to point out to you guys. First of all, that should stay. There we go. So the first thing that we're going to look at is our multicam cut and switch shortcuts. These are going to be foundational for how you actually work in the multicam space. I know Alex talked a little bit yesterday about some of his shortcuts that he uses. I'm probably going to completely butcher them, so I apologize in advance, but not really. So we're going to bind our cut and switches to, you can do it however you want, but I have them set to my numbers for cut and then my numpad numbers for switch. If you don't have if you're on a laptop without numpads, you could just use like Control 1 or Alt 1 or however you want to bind it. It works just fine. So we're going to use those. The next one we're going to be looking at is called a split clip. It's effectively the same as the razor tool, but I like using split clip. You could probably use either one. It's not going to make a huge difference. By default, it's Control / I have mine set to C for cut because that's what makes sense to me. And then we're going to bind auto align clips, and this one is going to showcase, or this one's going to pull up the auto sync window for when we're actually in our timeline. It just makes it easier than having to right click. And then we're going to click on this trim tab right here under all commands. And then we're going to go to a few more. And we're going to also, Alex also mentioned this one, the ripple start to playhead and end to playhead. These are also really useful because they slide the previous cut and the next cut to where the playhead is, and just makes that workflow a lot quicker. The other one we're going to look at, and I know I'm blazing through this, but we got a lot to get through. So we have select all clips under playhead and then select nearest clip and gap. I have those set to D and Shift D for whatever reason. You can set those to whatever you want, but this will basically just select whatever clip is right underneath the playhead so that you don't have to like click on it and then do right click. You can just quickly bind it. And then the last one we're going to need is called nudge. So we can pull down this, and then we have multi-frame left and right, which is it'll move the clips back and forth 5 frames. We have 1 frame left and right, so it nudges a clip 1 frame forward or 1 frame back. And then subframe left and right usually refers to if you're working with like mixed frame rates or working with audio. That's not going to be really much we're going to be working with today, so you can just ignore those for now. Perfect. Okay, so now that we got those out of the way, the first thing, and the also other prerequisite I want to mention is that we are working with proxy footage. I am working with DNxR HLB proxies, mainly because I don't want my computer to be freaking out whenever I'm playing back a bunch of H.265 footage and then have a heart attack, because that's not what we need today. So if it looks low quality, it's because I'm working with proxies, but that I can talk about later if there's any questions in regards to that. It does help your workflow a lot. So the first thing we're going to start out with our workflow here, we're going to start out with an ideal scenario where all 3 cameras have 1 take and we have a solid audio channel. So let's work with an ideal scenario, and that kind of gives us the idea of how this is supposed to work. So we can just highlight all of our clips here. We can highlight both of our folders to see all the clips inside of them. So the first thing we're going to do is right-click on the clips and then select Create New Timeline using selected clips. We're not using the Multicam because it makes different folders, and sometimes that can make it somewhat confusing, and it can move things around in a way you don't want. So this way is just a little bit more simplistic. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new timeline. Just going to call this single interview. I can type, guys, don't worry. I promise you I know how to type. Just kidding, I don't. Okay, and then we're going to just move this into our timelines folder here that I have set up. That way everything's kind of centralized. It's easier to find everything. So let's go ahead and double click this so we can open it on our edit page. And right away we see we have all three of our cameras here, including our audio that we want to utilize. So what we're going to do in order to get all these on the correct tracks, I want this one. This is our camera 1. This is our camera 2. This is our camera 3. So I want them to be on the correct layers for each one. So I'll go ahead and highlight these last two. I'm going to press Alt up, and that's going to move each of them up a layer. And then I'm going to select the third one and then press Alt up again. And then what I'm going to do is I want to keep the audio, our good audio, on the first layer, because anytime you sync something or sync audio, it's always looking at the highest up layer, or lowest layer in this case because it's layer 1. It's looking at that one, and it won't move that one, but it will move everything else. And I'll show you exactly what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and click this linked selection here. I'm going to click that. And then just to show you, because I am working on a 4K monitor, so it could be hard to see. So this link selection, I just wanted to untoggle this. And then we're going to highlight our audio clips here, press Alt down, and so that it can separate them. And now I'm going to turn that link selection back on again. And then I can just press Control A to highlight everything. And then we're going to use that Auto Align Clips shortcut. So for me, that's Alt S. To find that, if I just right clicking, you can just go here, Auto Align Clips. It's the same thing right there. So we're going to toggle waveform here, and we're going to allow this to sync. And as you can see, once it syncs, it keeps the first layer audio in the same place. And now we have everything perfectly synced up, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. I love it. Something I like to do with working with Multicam is I like to go to whatever video started last, and then just go into this point, use that split clip shortcut and make a cut here. And then I also have a shortcut that selects all the clips forward, which is this one. I have it bound to Shift A. I forget what it is by default. I can look into that later. But it selects all clips ahead of the playhead. I'm just going to click that and then bring this all the way back here so that whenever I preview my Multicam clip, all the ones show at the same time. So we have this all synced up, and then to make this a Multicam clip, what we can do is we can just go right up here into our clip itself. We're going to right click it, or the timeline, sorry, and then right click and select Convert Timeline to Multicam Clip. And once I do that, it's going to disappear from our timeline, but all we have to do is just click and drag it into our timeline, and now we have a Multicam clip. So we can always go back into this timeline at any point. The one quick thing I want to bring up is if you don't have this timeline tab pulled up here, we can go into this timeline view options and select display stacked timelines. If you're still on a version previous to 19, it won't show it like this. It'll show like 3 tabs at the top, and it's the one on the left. It looks exactly like this one, so just make sure that's highlighted. And then you have your timelines box, so we can make new timelines and do all that stuff that we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and right click our Multicam clip and select Open in Timeline. And now at any given point, we can just go back and forth in between our actual Multicam clip and the timeline that we're actually working in. So with the timeline that we're actually working in, I'm going to go ahead and rename this to just Single Interview. And we're going to go into our source viewer. We're going to toggle this, and we're going to go to Multicam. Remember, this is only in the source viewer. So once I toggle Multicam, we're going to be able to see all 3 of our cameras laid up here. And if you have more than 3 cameras or less or something, and you want to change the view, you can also go into this window and you can change it to, viewing it by 1 by 2 and seeing 2 cameras at a time. You can see 9 cameras at a time, whatever is most optimal for your workflow. And now, since we have this set up, we can do something absolutely beautiful. If we start scrolling through this, we can just use our cut shortcuts at any point. So let's say I want to go to camera 2 here. Good, I made a cut there. Let's go here, made a cut here, go to camera 3, and I can just keep going. And I can do this live too. So if I wanted to just make cuts live, like a big conglomerate effort to make, and I can do live cuts like that as well. Really simple. Now you'll notice that we also made cuts to the audio, and that might not be what you want because we probably don't want to switch audio sources as we're doing this. So there's a couple ways that you can work with that. Under this multicam window here, you'll see we have our video only, video and audio only options. If you select video only, now we can go through and do those same things, make cuts, but only to the video track. So you can just blaze through and then make all the cuts that you need to. And if you made a mistake on one of your clips and you want to switch the camera, like, oh, I don't want to make a new cut, but I accidentally messed that one up, we can just use that select shortcut to select the clip that's under the playhead, and then use our switch to shortcuts. So we can just press this, and you can see we can switch to any of the cameras without needing to make an additional cut. And it makes things super, super fast. So let's go ahead and back up a little bit. And so the next thing I want to mention here, oh, and you can also, like, if you have multiple audio sources, I'll get to that in a little bit. That's in the next example. But if you want to flatten your audio right here and you don't want it to be affected at all, it's not going to be a problem. You can also just unlink and you can just flatten the multicam clip. Or you can, unlink it, period, by just right-clicking and selecting link clips. There's a lot of ways you can work with that. So now the question becomes, once you get to this point, is how do you utilize other pages in this workflow? How do you utilize Fusion? How do you utilize Color? How do you utilize Fairlight? Well, I'm happy to tell you it's different for every single one. Awesome. So the first thing I want to go through is the actual color. The color usually is best inside of the multicam clip. And the reason being is because anytime you do color adjustments on the nested part of the clip itself, the nesting, it becomes very destructive to the video. You're not like actually getting the raw source. So you want to do your color adjustments inside of the multicam clip. So if we go to our color page here, I'm going to go ahead and pull down my clips. And I know all these are the same camera. These are all Fuji cameras. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of them and then right click and then add them to new group so that I can just apply them all here. And I have a saved template for this that I can apply to make it a lot easier. And then now that we've applied that to every single clip here, anytime we go back to the multicam or the regular timeline page, we start making, if we go back to our multicam here, start making cuts, no matter what we do, it's always going to save it's always going to reference what's inside of the multicam clip so that you don't have to like apply it to a bunch of different clips and do all this crazy stuff. You can just do it inside of the multicam clip and it makes it very, very easy. Since we're talking about color, I got a fun quick bonus tip for you guys. How many of you guys like split toning? So right now, this is not really a tip I see many people talk about, but we're going to be utilizing these two nodes real quick. On this balance node, I just have this set to linear gamma. So I'm going to be working in the gain to work my white balance. You can also use offset if you prefer that instead of linear gain. The other one is working in the LAB color space. And this one's interesting because it's not a color space people use that often. But what we're going to do is set our color space to LAB right here. Zoom in so you guys can see that. And we're going to disable channel 1. So effectively, we're disabling the luminance channel. And then under composite mode, we're setting it to color so that it ensures that we're not making any luminance changes or luminance value changes to our clip. So with those in mind, on the LAB node, I'm going to bring this down so you can see a little better, and I'm going to disable proxies so that it's a clear image. On the LAB node, I'm just going to go down to my gain here, and I'm just going to bring gain down to somewhere between 0.95 and 0.9, and probably just keep it around there. Now with our balance node, we're looking at our vector scope over here, like over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to just make sure our skin tones are perfectly in line where they should be. And you'll notice that when we move LAB, that skin tone line isn't really shifting, which is really nice. But let's go ahead and set this here. Now, effectively, what we've done, we've created a little split tone. Fun little bonus tip right there. There you go. You're welcome. Okay, moving on. So there's a quick thing I want to mention on if you're working on a 1080p monitor and you're only working with a single monitor, you don't have a dual screen. You might notice that if you have your inspector window open, it's not allowing you to have both your source and program windows up. So I'm going to show that real quick by shifting this over to a different monitor here. Let's see, bring workspace over to my secondary monitor here, switch that. All right, now we're working on a 1080p monitor, and as you can see, our source window is gone. And if we disable the inspector, the source window is back and we can start doing the multicam stuff again. This also happens with the metadata window as well. The easy way around this, if you wanted to have the inspector window open at the same time, not really easy, but essentially what you can do is double click the multicam clip in your timeline. That'll pull up in your source viewer, and then when you switch your multicam viewer to the source viewer to the multicam, it's going to go back to the program window, and then you can go up to workspace, go to active panel selection, and then click on source viewer. I think by default it's Control-3 as a shortcut there. And so if you click on that, now it tricks it into bringing both of them back up with the inspector window open. That's been a bug for a while. I don't know why it's there, but now you know how to fix it. There you go. It's kind of a goofy one. Sorry, let's go back to our primary window here. Perfect. Okay, next, let me bring up my notes because notes are important. Okay, yep, got timeline tabs here. Okay, yes. The other thing, so we know how to do color. There's a very important note in regards to Fairlight. You do not want to do your Fairlight work inside of the multicam clip because for some reason Fairlight doesn't like it and Fairlight doesn't save it. I'll show you an example here. I'm going to go ahead and mute. Whoops, forgot those were linked. Solo that's better. I'm going to go into Fairlight. And then let's say I use an effect here. It doesn't really matter what the effect is. I'm just going to pull this up. And then let's find this part where he's actually talking.
I am able to play different games, whether it's an indie game, whether it's a mainstream game, whether it's a AAA studio.
So
I take these games.
We're obviously cutting the mids because that's what any good EQ does. Just kidding. Don't yell at me, Jason. All right. So we're going to go ahead and close this out, go back to the edit. And then if we switch back to our main timeline, we can, well, first, before we do that, let's just make sure it's here.
I am able to play different games.
So it's there. If I toggle between this,
to put
now it's gone. So any of your Fairlight work you do not want to do on the multicam clip itself. You want to do it on the actual timeline, in your timeline, actual timeline, not within the multicam clip. So it's a very important distinction to make. So yeah, the non-effects like voice isolation and dialogue lever and stuff, those will actually get stuck in the multicam clip. And what'll happen is that it'll keep it enabled, but when you go back and forth, it'll still read it as enabled, but it'll have it listed as disabled. So you essentially click on it again and then it'll double up, and then there's not really a way to turn it off. So just keep that in mind. All right. So that's the first example we have here. We're going to go back to the media page for the second one here. And I'm going to do one where we have not as quite ideal of a scenario. Each camera has multiple takes. And this can get really annoying sometimes when you want to sync everything and it doesn't really react quite the way you want it to, and layers things on like 50 different layers. We don't want that. So, and there's a number of instances where we're actually going to use the cut page for this. There's a number of instances where Resolve will like kind of do the right job, but also kind of won't. So anyways, we're going to the cut page. And for this, we're pulling this up. There we go. Okay. So for this, if we try to go to our sync clips here, you notice it actually kind of does the right job. It puts things on the correct layers, but we notice that these audio files, or these audio layers, they're all from the same audio source, but it reads them as different. And we want them to be on the same layer so we're not creating a bunch of different things. There's another instance where if we try to do this with, let's say, the music video here, if you go up into this, you can, if you toggle this down, you can highlight all the folders that you want, and it'll show all the clips in that folder that you want to preview. So we'll go ahead and bring this music video down here and highlight all of these. This is kind of the same thing where there's multiple takes for something. And if I pull this up, you'll notice that it thinks that these two are different cameras, even though they're the same, but it gets these right. So again, that is to say that there's a lot of cases where it kind of does the right job, but it doesn't actually fully do it. How do we mitigate that? So if we go back to our media page, I'm actually going to go into Cam A. There's a toggle inside of this metadata tab that not many people know about. So we right click on here and then we go up to camera number. That's going to bring a new tab here. And this will allow us to manually set which angle or which layer we want all of our clips on. So let's go ahead and just set this as 1 here. I'm pressing F2 and then there we go. Cam B. So this is camera 2. So let's do 2. And then we'll go to Cam C. And this one's Cam 3. There's a lot of these. So we're just going to go see if I can get this fast enough. If you don't make sounds while you're editing, you're not a real editor. Okay, awesome. So this one is his love. I'm going to put this on layer 4. And then this one, all these three are the same. So I'll put these to layer 5. And then once we go back to our cut page, and then we highlight all of our folders that we need. If we pull this up, now you can see it layered them all exactly how we wanted to. Camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, 4, and then 5. And it layered these accordingly. Perfect. So now that we have all of our cameras lined up where they should be, all we have to do is just click our audio here. And Alex kind of showed the sync bin a little bit, so I don't have to go over it too much here. But once we click on this, we just, in the words of Mr. Alex Tech, give that a click, like so. He's going to get me for that one. Alex is deceivingly built, by the way. Have you ever noticed that? Like, if you ever meet him in real life, he's just, like, you know, he's the only type of person I've met in real life where the camera loses 10 pounds. Anyways, that was too much information. So what this is doing is once this is synced, we're going to save sync. And when we save sync, that's actually creating a multicam clip for us. So once this is done, any second now, this is complete, and boom, we've got our sync for all of our cameras here. So we'll go ahead and save sync. And it's not going to show up on the edit page or the cut page, but on the edit and media pages, we'll see that it did indeed create us a multicam clip. So I'm going to throw this into the timelines tab, and I'm going to call this the 2 interview multi. And I'm just denoting multi as the multicam clip, just to make it easier. So if we go to our edit page and then pull up our media pool, I'm going to go ahead and right click this and open or actually just create new timeline. And we'll just call this the 2 interview. And now we have our multicam clip just sitting right here, all ready to go. And then we can also, once again, right click it in the media pool, hit open in timeline, and go back into it at any point. Now, by default, when you use the sync clips option, it will lock the tracks. So you can just click on this and unlock them all if you need to make any changes to the sync, or if it forgets any audio that we can just, bring right back in and resync it with what we need to. So I can just highlight those because I know that those are the clips I need synced here. So I'll just do that. Waveform, sync. And that will do its thing. And then do the same thing with this one, waveform sync, and habushki. We've got it. So with this one, there's, let's see. There's an interesting trick that we can do with this one too, that goes into if you're only using a single camera. So right now we also, we can just do our standard method of like cutting through all this stuff, yay, all that great stuff. And then because this one has two different audio sources, we're going to want to click on this with making sure our linked selection is disabled. And we're just going to alt drag this down. And then we can select this one and make sure we know which audio source that we're actually referencing. So this one's audio layer 4. My audio is audio layer 5. So I can just go here, press 4, and then go here. Oh, you can't even see that. My bad. Go here, press 4 on the numpad for switch, and then go here and then press 5 to switch to that layer. Perfect. And then, if we wanted to, we could flatten these as well. And now the raw audio is now actually in our timeline. It's not going to be affected. But if we didn't want to do that originally because we were like cutting parts out and then we can flatten it later, that works too. All right. So there's a really unique trick. If you are only using a single cam, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, this was our only camera we had. Let's go, and I'm just going to take one clip as an example. I'm going to make a new timeline with this clip here. I'm just going to do single cam multi. That's not an oxymoron at all. What we can do with this, so we can actually just make 3 layers. So I'm going to duplicate this twice. Once again, holding Alt, dragging up twice. And now, normally you would think that you could just use the transform and the edit page, move this around, and you can do that. But the actual multicam clip won't recognize this. So it'll still reflect on the timeline page, but in your multicam viewer, you won't really see it. So what we can do here is use our first instance of doing stuff in Fusion. So we can just go to Fusion here, and then turn off the keyframes window. And I'm just going to pull in a transform node here. And we're just going to go up to our inspector, bring size up to 2. And then we're just going to move this into a point where I can see myself in a pretty reasonable composited window. Go back to the edit page. I'm going to right click and then hit enable clip. I have this bound to E, so if I press E, that's what it's doing, is hitting this enable clip. You can just easily disable clips without having to click on the track itself. And then we're going to go into this one, hit transform, go to size, set that to 2 as well, and then just drag it over to where I get a reasonable composite of him. Again, not looking at too hard or too specific. All right, now we've got those, and this one I don't need to set because this is the wide cam. We don't need to adjust it. So if I go back to if I right click this and then convert this to multicam, then once again, create a new timeline with it, single cam, and I'm going to throw both of these in the timelines folder just so we stay organized and we don't go too insane. Now, if I pull up my multicam viewer, now we have 3 different angles with just a single camera. So you can do this with talking head pieces as well. So if you have a talking head that's you want to be able to zoom in on, you want the camera to follow it, you can use a tracker for it. This is a really good way to just utilize the multicam clip, even if you're just using a single camera. It's very, very convenient. So you can just cut in, still do all of your cuts like you normally would. So fun little tip there. All right, I think that's all on that one. Yep. So the unique thing is that Fusion, the way you work with Fusion is you can use it both on the inside of the multicam clip and outside. So literally all 3 pages are different. Color you do inside of multicam, Fairlight you do outside of multicam, Fusion you can use both. So you can do Fusion stuff on this side as well. Like let's say you wanted to, let's say at this point we wanted to maneuver here and just like have us both on the screen at the same time. And then we can just, you know, make a Fusion clip out of this, go inside of it, and then, you know, don't know why it's showing the X. Okay, yeah, I just had to put a transform. That's awesome. So let's see, we can put a mask here and a mask there. Do that. And then move this to the side. And then you could do some other fancy things by like, you know, putting this in a tile-like state. And you could apply a background to it. Obviously, I'm just doing this really roughly to show this as an example, but you could do something like this. And I'm going to show a little bit more of a practical example with podcasts if we have time. So that's a really cool thing you can do with Fusion as well, utilizing it on the timeline side of things. All right, so we're going to do that. All right, next we're going to go into a music video example. So in the music video example here, let's go ahead and go back to the media page. And this one's interesting because we have one audio track for multiple takes. And this one was something that was recorded live. So we're just going to, instead of having this sync with, automatically sync, we can just create a new timeline here because there's something interesting that we want to do with this. So music video multi. Go ahead and open that up. All right, so we're going to put these, let's see, this one is camera 3. I want this on the 3rd layer. I want this one on the 2nd layer. Okay. So put these on the 2nd layer here. All right, and we're going to separate the takes accordingly so that they match each other. So I'm going to put this one over here and this one over here. And once again, we're going to do the audio trick of making sure they're all below the 1st layer here. So now, if we try and sync this up, let's see if this works. If we try to sync this up, doesn't find a match. Wonder why. Let's go ahead and move these aside, and let's try to sync the 2nd one here. This does sync, because this is the take that we actually used with the piece, but there might actually be some shots in this one that we want to utilize. Now, how do we sync this up? There's a couple different ways that we can do this. The first is, let's make sure that we can actually sync these together with themselves, because that'll make things a lot easier. So let's go ahead and try and sync those. Boom, those do sync. Okay, perfect. So now, can we sync the same camera with a same camera? Let's see if we can do that. All right, I'm going to enable this link selection so we can highlight both video and audio. I'm just going to move this one up, and even though these are different takes, the waveforms are very similar. So let's see if we can sync those. We can. Perfect. So we can move this one up a couple, and I'm just going to move these up a couple as well. And now I can just highlight these and only highlight one of these cameras. I don't want to highlight everything because it's going to base it off of this audio file, and I don't want the secondary take to try and sync with that because it can't. So let's go ahead and just sync these together. And now we have all 6 cameras synced together. And if we need to do any like fine-tune adjustments, or if it wasn't like absolutely perfect, we can zoom in. And I'm zooming by holding Alt and scrolling, by the way. Didn't make that clear. So this is our audio file that we're referencing. So some of these might not be perfectly in line. So we can just click on one and we can use that nudge tool that we, or the nudge shortcut that we mentioned earlier, and just move it frame forward, back, however is needed until we get things synced as basically as good as we can. That's one way you can just do a quick manual sync there. And then once again, we can convert this to a multicam clip, excuse me. Right click, create a new timeline, music video. And I'm going to throw these both in the timeline viewer. And now we have, switch this to multicam. I'm going to remove the media pool so this is larger. Now we have an instance where we can switch this to 3. Now we can see all 6 cameras at the same time. So if there was a take that had a bit of a better shot from one of the cameras, we can easily go back to it and reference it. So the other thing is, if there's a bunch of black space here, you can always cut it from here, or something I like to do in this instance, if I go back into the multicam clip, is make sure I highlight everything, bring it all back. You can also ripple delete if that works for you. And I'll just cut it to where this song starts. Once again, select everything ahead of the timeline and bring it back. So then I'm going to go back to the music video here. We can just get rid of all this extra fluff that we don't need. So it's probably like right here. And you can use that shift start to playhead or end the playhead for that one to cut that down. All right. Okay, where are we at on time? Okay, we got a little bit more. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to show you one more quick example, and then we'll go to questions. So the last example I'm going to show is something with a quick manual sync here. And this is going to be a podcast example. This is if you're doing remote recordings. And this one can get tedious because there's not a great way to automatically sync it, because there's always latency with remote recordings, especially if one's recording locally, one's not. So here's how we deal with that. We're going to create a new timeline with this. We'll do podcast multi. And then right here, I remember I accidentally recorded an extra track here, so this one's actually useless. But what we have here is an instance where I recorded his audio. And this is our good buddy Matt McCool, if you guys remember him. We did a little bit of a podcast together. So I recorded his audio, and he also recorded his screen and recorded my audio. So if I was to try and sync these together, they don't perfectly match up. So what we can do here is, one, I need to make sure I know which one is his good mic. So I believe that's this layer right here. Yes, it is. Okay, and then this one's probably mine.
What if you're...
Yeah, perfect. All right, so what we can do is we can move this down here. And I want to be able to sync this with his camera, because I know these should be in line, because these are both his recordings. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to put this on the 3rd layer because that's a screen recording. Bring this over here. Get it maybe roughly in place. I can go ahead and just auto sync it as well. See if that syncs. And basically the idea is that I want to be able to make sure that his webcam is actually synced with his recorded audio, because sometimes those can be slightly out of sync depending on webcam latency. So let's just go ahead and disable this track, make sure we know which track is his, which is this one right here. So I want to make sure that it seems in line. And I can also hear that we're getting that classic left ear. Easy way to fix that is just right click on the track, change track type to mono,
as I've gotten older
and then
more
easy fix
into Resolve, it seems like...
Yep, perfect. All right, so we got that. This is just scratch audio. We can remove that and then this is my audio, I can remove that as well because I want to base it off of what I had recorded. So I'm going to delete my scratch audio because I don't need it. So now I know that these are linked. So I can just, link all three of these together so that way, if I have my link selection on, I can highlight all three of them. So now let's see here. Now there was a point in this where I had to cut my recording and restart it because we had a fun technical issue occur. So the first thing is let's get the first one synced up. So let's just move it all a little bit here. And I want to just sync to my audio. It should reference based off of this track here, which is the track that I had recorded of him. Or sorry, this one right here. So I need to switch the track number to 2. So now we'll see if this syncs up. And then once it does, it doesn't. So an easy way to fix that is we can look and see, okay, do we have any matching waveforms here? It looks like they match somewhat here. So let's go ahead and drag this over. And we can just scroll in and then do our nudging as needed to make sure that we get them pretty in line with what we want. I'm leaning on the side of putting the audio before his so that there's a slightly less delay. But that'll sync up. And then we can go ahead and do the same thing over here, and I can just move my clip into place. Once again, looking for his point here. I'm going to just skim this ahead real quick and then bring this down to about there. Good. Now let's turn this link selection off so I can just enable that again. And then let's bring this all back. Cut our clips, bring this all back so we have this start. And then we can go ahead, once again, do our classic convert to multicam clip, create a new timeline, podcast, and now we have everything synced up accordingly. And we're good. So then we can do all this types of stuff. All right. Now, if there's an instance where we wanted both of us to be on screen at the same time, we could do something like, doing this example again, switch to his cam, and then we could use something like the video collage effect. So we can apply that to both. And then I have to blaze through this because we're running out of time. But create those tiles, make the rows down to 1 here. And then on this one, set this to tile 2. And now we have like a split screen, and then we can always go to, let's see, where is it? Yeah, the resize content and just, pan it so that we make sure that both of them are centered. And then you have a way to make sure
that's exactly what I was doing.
Both of us are on screen at the same time. So a lot of really fun things you can do with multicam. A lot of amazing tips and tricks and all the wonderful wishy all the great stuff. Fun. So yeah, that's multicam. There's a lot more scenarios that you could run into, like if there's mixed frame rates, there's ways to mitigate those as well. A lot of different ways to work with multicam. So it's a really fun tool that I love using. But hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed that. That was, I'm pretty sure I'm close to time-ish.
That was awesome. Tim, dude, there are so many cool tactics for making your edits better with that. I love that. Especially love the doing the fusion like punch ins and then making that into a multicam. Like that's smart, man. That's next level. I love that.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
It's a lot of fun.
All right, so we do have some questions. Let's pop those on. Pop them on. All right. Could the multicam workflow be used with a single clip but segmented in multiple parts instead of doing the editing on one timeline or stacked timeline like we always do? What was that?
Yeah, I believe Sorry.
Can you hear me? Sam was talking behind the scenes. Sam. Um,
Sam's
does this
just he's
question make
just
sense?
gushing over me. No, wait, no, sorry, that was out loud. I think so. So a multicam workflow be used with a single clip, but segmented into multiple parts. You can like, so I guess that kind of goes. My guess is that was posted before I did the single cam example. I don't know when it was posted,
Yeah,
but you can use a single camera to do multiple things. So you can, yeah, I believe that answers that question. If it doesn't, let me know and I can clarify if it didn't.
Okay. Why do I want to flatten clips? What's the point of that?
So for yes, so flattening clips is good for mostly for audio purposes, so that you're not working on a nested clip. I can actually show a quick example because I didn't really have time to show what goes wrong with that. But yeah, let me show this one real quick. So with this, like, let's say hypothetically speaking, we had I'm just going to like add some like contrast here and like blow this out. Let's make it look really bad, right? If I was to, now normally those types of edits are non-destructive, right? But if we go back to our timeline and then we try to do the color on the color page here, I can even show this on a waveform. If I pull this back, you'll see that this is still flatlined because it's nested. So that's what I meant earlier by saying it was a destructive thing to do to your clips, because it actually just removes, like, it's looking at as a new image and not with any of the original data that it had. So flattening clips will help with, like, so if I flatten this as an example, if I just copy the multicam grades and keep them here, if I go back into the color now, now all that data is back because it's no longer nested, right? So
Yeah.
that's why you flatten. Kind of the same goes for audio, but because Fairlight has those weird issues with audio, it's just best to do it on the timeline instead of inside of the multicam clip.
For this single camera multicam, is it best to edit all the timelines in 1080 or 4K, assuming all original cameras were shot at 4K?
Yeah, that depends on your deliverable. You can do 4K if your computer will handle it, especially if you're doing proxy workflow. If you know you're going to deliver in 4K, I would probably keep the timeline at 4K unless you're doing some like heavy stuff in Fusion. But if you're working with DNxHR or ProRes proxies, that'll help speed up your workflow exponentially, even if you're not on a strong machine. So that way it's not like trying to read heavily compressed clips and, like, in terms of H.264 and H.265, all that stuff. So, but like, it just depends on your deliverable. If you're delivering 1080, you can keep your timeline at 1080, and that'll work just fine. It's not going to destroy the quality if you do it on a 1080p timeline versus 4K. If your deliverable is 1080p, if your deliverable is 4K, keep your timeline at 4K.
Great, thanks, man. All right, can you still ripple delete a multicam clip or edit other footage in between, or do you have to unsync and unlink the clips?
You can still ripple delete, yeah. So a multicam clip in the timeline will function like a normal clip would. So if you have B-roll on top and you have other things in your timeline and you use the ripple delete function, it's going to behave the exact same way. So there's not really any difference with that.
Okay, great.
As far as I'm aware.
All right, when editing multicam, is there a quick way to adjust your edits for a camera so that they are a few seconds earlier than the cut, or do I just need to do all the adjustments manually?
Is there a quick way to adjust the edits for a camera? Not sure. The edits for the camera.
It seems like it's
what is it?
Like, if there's a way to like offset the sync when you sync it, is what they're asking, versus you have to go into the multicam and move it around. I think that's what they're saying.
Oh, like doing it inside of the multicam clip instead of on the, or doing it on the timeline instead of inside the multicam?
I think
Is
so.
that what he's asking? Okay.
I'm not sure. We need clarity on that. Sorry.
Yeah, I might need a little more clarity on that. So like, the idea is that if you do it inside of the multicam clip, it's going to affect it for the rest of the timeline. So if you do move stuff inside of the multicam clip, it will shift in your timeline because it's referencing a different different frame of the source. If that makes any sense. I can get back with you later if you need more clarity.
Awesome. All right. If I cut 2 long clips in 2 shorter bits and then try to audio sync them, will it take less time?
If you cut 2 clips, not really, because it's still referencing the original source. So unless you like have 2 different exports of clips, so let's say you have a clip that's an hour long, right? And then you made an export that was like a section was 10 minutes, another section was 10 minutes, and then you brought those back into Resolve, tried to sync those, that would take less time. But if you're just trimming clips inside of the timeline, it's still referencing the full clip because it's trying to find the best point of sync. So it'll take about the same amount of time if you trim the clips versus if you don't.
Awesome. All right, and then our last one is, how can a man be so beautiful and so knowledgeable?
All right, guys, this was a great session. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and